Peace and quiet. Well, it turns out that is how some rank the most peaceful place in the United States, which happens to be Fort Collins, Colorado. Insider Monkey ranked Fort Collins the #1 place to live as far as peacefulness in the United States, and also the travel.com ranked Fort Collins the most peaceful city within Colorado. And in this video, we are going to talk to you about why Fort Collins ranks the way that it does. We are going to talk to you about the culture and choices about why Fort Collins is peaceful. And heck, City of Fort Collins City Council doesn't just stop at wanting to be the 38 decibels noise level, which is essentially leaves rustling across the street. City Council is looking about the noise ordinance of Fort Collins and how can we keep this place a quiet and peaceful city. And finally, number 4, why does this matter moving into the future? So let's jump right in. So why is Fort Collins the most peaceful city in Colorado and ranked as the most peaceful city in the entire United States? Well, it starts with sound. An average sound of 38 decibels on average, that is not all the time because there are still people with loud mufflers, honking, trains, all that kind of stuff at different times. This is on average, and essentially that is leaves rustling across the street along the wind. So that is what is ranking a city of 170,000 people so strongly. And Boulder, our neighbor to the south, actually came in #2 according to Insider Monkey. So we are fighting with our neighbor to the south. But what else makes Fort Collins peaceful? Well, we've got over 280 miles of bike trails, and that's 45 miles of paved trails with 70 more coming. We've got over 50 parks in the Fort Collins area with over 50,000 conserved acres in Larimer County, 35,000 or so in Fort Collins, which really just gives people that push to be outside, enjoy, spread out. Our size of city is actually comparable, about 57 square miles, to that of Boston, but our density is much, much smaller. You know, there's 400,000 people in Boston, 170,000 in Fort Collins. There's a lot more in the city on a daily basis in Boston, but those are who actually live there, reside there. And same thing in Fort Collins, there's a lot of people who move in on a daily basis to work, nearly about 200,000 total. But our population density is much more spread out. So it does feel a little bit calmer, less congested, which equates to a little bit quieter area. We've got access to tons of recreation and outdoor enjoyments. Horsetooth Mountain, Horsetooth Open Space, Laurie State Park, Rocky Mountain National Park is just out our back door. We've got Horsetooth Reservoir. It is the Pooter Trail, Cache La Pooter River that is going along. So it is a very focused, outdoor, nature-centered community. Now that's important. Also, there's a lot of different visual appealing aspects of Fort Collins. Our eyesight, we have the majority, most all of our utility lines are buried underground. So that's gonna allow some really beautiful sights. It's not gonna show congestion. We are spread out. So if you're coming from a major metro and you just feel that city noise all the time, moving here could kind of feel like you're shutting the door to a soundproof room, just kind of going, phoom, and it just going quiet. And maybe what brings a little bit of peace to Fort Collins and why Harper Goff brought some of the design to Disneyland is the buildings, the design. It is Main Street Disneyland is a kind of focal point in downtown Old Town Fort Collins, which is inspiration for a lot of different design, buildings, and architecture, which does just bring that peaceful feel. Now, if you are moving from a big city, big metro, looking for a little bit more relaxed, calming place, and Fort Collins is at the top of your list, we've helped hundreds of families move to Fort Collins from across the country and across the world. We've really dialed in our systems. So if that is you, give us a call, text or email, or scan this QR code. My team and I would love to be an asset on your team when making that relocation. Again, we've helped hundreds of families relocate to the area. And one of the things that I find most peaceful about Fort Collins is after your long work day, you can jump on your bike, find yourself at a brewery or find yourself at a park or, in some nature, and within 10 minutes, we actually decided to live in our house, decided to stay in our house rather than move further out into the country because we're like, why would we do that? We love our schools. It's a good neighborhood. We're right next to Fossil Creek Park, and essentially all of the trails are right near us. So why would we leave such a great location, especially when our kids are young and really active and we want to be around those friends? So for us, definitely location is important, and the peace that we get and feel on a daily basis is pretty lucky, especially watching that sunset go down over the mountains. Now, why is this the way that it is? It's our culture and choices that is keeping Fort Collins the way that it is. City Council, a big priority of theirs is a 15-minute community. Essentially, walk, bike, ride, or roll anywhere within 15 minutes. And that's your grocery, restaurants, your watering hole, friends, family, whatever that might be within 15 minutes. And that's tough when we are such a sprawled out community, but with an intentionality behind it, we can get there. And that just means fewer cars on the road, less noise, and a little bit less congestion and pollution downtown and different areas. CSU is a major component to Fort Collins. 8,000 people employed, 35,000 students. It's a tier 1 research institution, and a lot of their focus and intentionality is behind sustainability, energy research. And so we have a tier 1 research institution in our backyard that is really focusing on driving and pushing forward with these types of cultural changes in communities and the world. And the city of Fort Collins is also putting their money where their mouth is. Currently, we've got 2 electric buses with more coming down the pipeline. And we also want to be carbon neutral by 2050 with an 80% reduction by 2030. I actually was talking to my wife the other day. We live on a busier street. So it's funny that I'm talking about peace when we live on a street where when I talked with my wife, I said, when we buy this house, we're gonna get a deal because we're buying it on and it backs to a busier road. But when we sell it, we're gonna have to give a deal. But I was talking to my wife just the other day and I was like, we're probably a ways out from this, but I actually think it might not be as big of a deal backing to a busier road that it once was, because we have this huge push as a society, community to move to more hybrid and electric. And so those louder, combustion engines aren't going to be going out our back door on a daily basis. So that being said, we do feel that it is going to be more and more peace as far as noise goes, the more we push towards that kind of hybrid and electric style vehicles. We actually had clients move here from Kansas City, and that was a big push for them when they moved here. They actually sold both their vehicles. They replaced one with an EV and another one with actually an electric bike, because the bike trail system here is so good that they can kind of get anywhere they want to be with that electric bike that they can put the kids on the back and get rocking and rolling. And I would say culture is a huge thing. There are people who bike year round. We've got 2 different bike to work days in Fort Collins in the winter and the summer, and essentially trying to get people out off the roads. It's a big push for the city of Fort Collins to get people off the roads, and they call it the active modes program, essentially trying to find a way to combat carbon emissions by way of getting people on bikes, in more electric, using buses, public transportation. And so I would say it is a big push as far as the city, and it's kind of like a cool thing to do. You're like, I rode my bike into work, and there's almost a little bit of a guilt every once in a while, like, dang, I didn't ride my bike in. I've got a Ford F-150 truck that I rode in here, and I love my truck. That is, I'm not gonna lie about that. I absolutely love my truck. And but there could be some cool options here in the near future. But definitely the culture of Fort Collins is pushing towards carbon neutral, more electric vehicles, more vehicles off the roads, which equates to a little bit quieter an area, and essentially that equates to peace. So there are many priorities within the city of Fort Collins, and we don't disregard noise. Actually, City of Fort Collins is currently going through a new noise ordinance. I was eating down at Rare Italian, and if you're sitting outside in the summer, there is going to be some roaring trucks going down the way. Motorcycles are very loud. And when I was growing up here, they used to call it rolling coal. And it would be like Friday night, Saturday night, there would be high school kids that would get their big old diesel trucks and they would roll coal down College Avenue. They have made that essentially illegal in Fort Collins, so that has, dramatically decreased. It's also not necessarily a cool thing to do anymore. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get some rip-roaring motorcycles flying down College Avenue, but they are putting a noise ordinance in place, which the average noise in Fort Collins of 38 decibels is lower than what our noise ordinance is going to be. And so I don't mess up numbers. I am going to read from my bullet points, which is for residential, they're looking at 55 decibels daytime and 50 decibels at nighttime. Commercial, 60 by day, 55 by night, and industrial, the industrial area, up to 80 by day. And then quiet hours are from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. And there are some exceptions for like lawn tools, snow removal, construction, church bells, and emergency vehicles. So while Fort Collins is already seemingly a very quiet area, Fort Collins residents want the peace, from those kind of one-off nuisances where the muffler's been removed, or they're kind of revving their engines. There will be a law and ordinance where police officers will have the ability to enforce that. I don't know how the operation of that looks. Are they going to have essentially a sound reader like they have a speedometer or speed reader? I'm not necessarily sure on how to prove that. So there might be some ways that there needs to get figured out, probably much smarter than myself. But regardless is there are going to be some tools in the City Fort Collins tool belt to kind of keep those one-off issues at bay. And I will say one thing, if you're interested in, send me an email. I send out a weekly newsletter. I've been doing it now for nearly a year that talks to you guys about what is going on through city council, ordinances that are taking places, developments that are happening, things to do in the area. So if that's something that you're interested in and you want to get kind of really down into the nitty gritty, send me an email and I will add you to our newsletter. Now, why does this matter moving into the future? And I will say, I think one of the things that Fort Collins has done very well is grow with the right mindset. We are a smaller city town, but we're now a little bit big. We're definitely bigger than a town, more of a city, smaller city, but smaller, moving into a little bit bigger. By 2040, we're expected to have 240,000 people with a build out of around 250,000 people. And what that means is we need to build how we want to see our future today. And with the past of Fort Collins, we've had some phenomenal city planners, city managers, city mayors, because there are areas and towns that you can tell just grew way too quick without a real understanding of how and where they want to grow. That's not the case in Fort Collins. Our city plan seems very well put together with a vision towards the future of, again, growing out to 240,000 people by 2040. Not sure if we'll get there. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But having tools and systems in place to keep that smaller town charm while you're becoming a bigger city. And one thing that the city council is actually struggling with right now is some design changes, some permitting fees, utility fees, the expense it is to live here, our city sales tax, and all of those different things. And, our mayor suggested that, hey, you know what? I can say the one thing that is for sure true is Fort Collins is an amazing place to be and live. And what we want to continue is to continue to have that be that place without it being super expensive to make it that way. So there are some kind of dynamics that are in motion right now to understand how we want to grow into the future. Keep it somewhat affordable, don't make it go too crazy as far as expense, but also maintain this phenomenal lifestyle that people move here in droves to enjoy. Now, before we get too crazy, I will say Fort Collins is a balanced approach. We have a lot of fun things that are going on, parades, the lighting ceremony down in Old Town for the holiday lights. We have a bustling Old Town. We actually have FOCO MX, which is a music weekend, music fest down in Fort Collins. Bohemian Foundation is all about the arts, music, and culture. Washington's Avogadro's Number. We've got the Aggie. We've got the Armory. We've got some phenomenal places that make Fort Collins really fun and loud. My wife and I are going to a Red Rocks concert tonight, and we had to look at to see how do people deal with living around Red Rocks, because it's such a loud, noisy venue. And there are some noise ordinances that during the week they have to stop at 11:30, and during the weekends they have to stop at midnight. If you live in and around Red Rocks, that's kind of an expectation that there's going to be some sound and noise. Same with downtown Fort Collins. If you live out in kind of the suburbs, not suburbs, but outer skirts of Fort Collins away from downtown, it's probably going to be a little bit quieter. But if you're living close to downtown, expect a little bit noise and activity. But how can we balance the approach of all right, we really don't want motorcycles ripping, roaring, revving their engines, loud mufflers, and things of that nature. There are some things that we can't necessarily control to a certain degree. Train horns, ambulances, and semis and things of that nature that do find their way through Fort Collins. But balancing the joy and entertainment and excitement that Fort Collins downtown and Fort Collins is with the day-to-day of let's just remove some of these kind of annoyances. And that's why a lot of people move to Fort Collins, is because they want a little bit more laid-back lifestyle. They want a more active lifestyle. They want to get out and enjoy the bikes. When I did my biking to work for a week kind of series, it was a really great time for me to just ride and think. One, I'm not on my phone. You know, we do have a hands-free law in Colorado, so technically you're not supposed to be on your phone ever in your car, but it's hard not to when you're at a stoplight and you just brain's going a million miles an hour. But when you're on the trails riding, you just kind of zone out. You get to think, get to enjoy yourself. And if you're riding along, you know, the Pooter Trail 45 miles from Bellevue to Greeley, that's a great opportunity to get out and enjoy what is nature and northern Colorado. So people don't necessarily move here to go to the professional sports venues. They go down to Denver for that. You know, they spend their weekend down in Denver, or go down to Red Rocks like we are for the concerts. But on a day-to-day basis, they want to enjoy life. They want to enjoy the laid-back lifestyle. They want to go grab a beer, have fun, walk downtown, you know, go to the gardens at Spring Creek, all the different 1,000 acres worth of parks here in Fort Collins, and just relax and enjoy life. Now, hey, if you're actually interested in some of the quietest neighborhoods, let me know. Send me an email. I've got basically a report of where I believe the quietest neighborhoods are. You're not going to have the ones that are going to be downtown or next to kind of commercial developments. So if you do want that kind of 15-minute walk life, you're probably not going to find those neighborhoods on this list. But if you just want to go and it be quiet, I've got the list for you. So send me an email and I'll get you that report. And you know, I've lived here my entire life, and I will say I have taken for granted how awesome Fort Collins is, but on a daily basis, especially with helping hundreds of families move and relocate to Fort Collins in northern Colorado, we get told how amazing Fort Collins is, how peaceful it is, how much they're enjoying life, how much they're living life. So that's something that I definitely take for granted. But this video, these rankings on Insider Monkey and the travel.com discussing why Fort Collins is as peaceful it is, it's great to see. Just kind of cements how I feel and how others feel about the area. So I appreciate you watching, and if you're interested in finding out more about Fort Collins, watch these next videos and hopefully they help you on that relocation decision.